Early June 2022, Emily and I spent 7 days in Yosemite National Park. We stayed at North Pines Campground for 3 nights, backpacked in the wilderness for 2 nights, and spent 1 night at the Yosemite Valley Backpackers Campground. We flew from Denver into Fresno and landed around noon. We made it to the entrance station at 4:15 p.m., which is an ideal time considering the permit system stops at 4 p.m. The tunnel view was a highly anticipated attraction for us, one of the most scenic overlooks in the park. After setting up camp at North Pines Campground, we went to the general store, explored a little bit, and then called it a night. Our first hike in Yosemite National Park was the Upper Yosemite Falls Trail, one of the most popular hikes in the park. Lots of switchbacks that'll get you to the top of the waterfall with amazing views on the way up. Once at the top, an additional mile separates Yosemite Falls from Yosemite Point. The hike was awesome, despite the on and off drizzle and rain clouds. This is a hard hike, but worth it, with a total of 8.5 miles round trip and 3,700 feet of total elevation gain. After that, we visited Lower Yosemite Falls, which is only an additional mile from Camp 4. Due to the easy access to the lower falls, the viewpoint was extremely crowded. There was not much more to explore in the village, so we drove up Tioga Road and found some extremely scenic cascades flowing under a bridge. Woke up early and hiked to Mirror Lake, and was a great morning hike from the North Pines Campground. Mirror Lake is more of a pond that offers awesome reflections of Mount Watkins and Half Dome. Nearby, a mound of several cairns is an odd but interesting feature. This hike was about 4.5 miles round trip and relatively flat. After our morning hike, we drove to the South Wilderness office to pick up our Half Dome and backpacking permit. Next stop was next door at the Mariposa Welcome Plaza. Either a 10-minute shuttle ride or a 2-mile hike separates the plaza from the Mariposa Grove. The 1.5-mile loop trail was pretty crowded, but if you decide to go past Tunnel Tree, the crowds thin out a little bit. There are several trails that loop through the grove. We clocked in about 5 miles with 1,000 feet of elevation gain. Day 4 was when we began our backpacking trip. We started at the Happy Isles trailhead, went onto the Mist Trail, and hiked past 2 extremely scenic waterfalls, Vernal Fall and Nevada Fall. The Mist Trail connects with the John Muir Trail before reaching Little Yosemite Valley, where we would have to set up camp for night 1. There were lots of campsites available. Each one of them had a bear box too. After a short rest, we grabbed our day packs and headed up towards Half Dome. Before reaching the Half Dome cables, the trail switchbacks up about 2.5 miles and 2,000 feet of elevation gain. The cable portion was stressful due to overcrowding, a couple slow hikers, but the views at the top made it all worth it, and there were several views to admire. After a half an hour at the summit, it was time to return to Little Yosemite Valley. There's a beach along the Merced River, which is a great place to swim and relax. While hanging out in the tent, we heard some rustling around, and we did have to scare away a bear that got a little too close to our campsite. After the bear encounter, we ate dinner, relaxed a little bit more, put everything back in the bear sack, bear canister, and called it a night. We packed up the tent and began the long slog up to Clouds Rest. From Little Yosemite Valley to the summit of Clouds Rest was about 3,800 feet of elevation gain and 4 miles. But the views at the top were worth the pain. From the summit of Clouds Rest, we made our way down to Lower Sunrise Lake. We decided this area was too buggy to camp, but we found another campsite about a half mile away, west of the trail junction, up the unnamed mountain. This was one of the most epic camp spots I've ever been at. Great views of Clouds Rest and Half Dome could be seen from inside the tent. The rest of the day was just relaxing and eating. At the end of the day, we clocked in about 12.5 miles with around 4,000 feet of elevation gain. We were determined to make it back to the Happy Isles trailhead on this day, even though our original plan was to make this a 3-night backpacking trip. This would involve almost 20 miles of hiking. Luckily, most of it downhill. Hiked from Sunrise Lake's Trail Junction to Tenaya Lake. Waded across the mosquito-infested creek and then joined up with the Snow Creek Trail. We would be on this trail most of the day. Olmsted Point, the overlook, was very scenic, but the rest of the trail was kind of uneventful compared to the first 2 days of our backpacking trip. Once we crossed the Snow Creek Bridge, we had to descend about 1,000,000 switchbacks to reach the valley floor. Once at the bottom, it was about a 3-mile hike to get back to our rental car. This 3-day loop was around 45 miles and 10,600 feet of total elevation gain. We set up our tent at the Yosemite Valley Backpackers Campground, then took a quick plunge into Tenaya Creek before heading to Curry Village Pizza Deck. After a long hike like that, the pizza and beer tasted so good. Our final day, we wanted to take it easy. We had plans to hike up to May Lake. Those plans changed to hiking May Lake up to Mount Hoffmann. So glad we decided to add a summit hike, despite being tired from the previous days of hiking. Mount Hoffmann was a scenic trail without the crowds. The views at the top gave us perspective on how big and beautiful Yosemite National Park really is. Total distance was 6 miles with 2,000 feet of elevation gain. From here, we made our long drive to Fish Camp, where we would stay for our final night in California. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm Dave Spates. See you on the next hike.